Sir, great to have you with us today. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks, Vince. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Sorry, sorry I wasn't here yesterday, but you kind of saw we were a little busy in LA.
I could tell you are very busy right now, and I have a lot of appreciation for that. So let's just dive into what is going on. First and foremost, I've been talking a lot about the threats to ICE officers, and the number I keep seeing is that assaults on ICE officers are up over 400%. Give us some perspective on that. What is going on with the guys who you have out in the field right now?
Well, that's one thing, Vince. That's really kind of troubling for us. I got asked the other day what keeps you up at night. And the assaults on ICE officers are through the roof. Like you said, we're at 413% since January 20th. Everything from officers being run over on traffic stops, knives being pulled out, punched in the face. Go to LA now. We've had, officers and agents. One had a rock through the windshield, broke his hand, cut him up pretty bad. Another officer took a firework off the foot, burnt his whole foot. They're out there every day. The men and women of ICE are out there every day, and they're encountering such, violence, rhetoric, the doxing, the threats. It's really, really bad. And all they're doing is their sworn law enforcement duty, right? Like they're just like any other law enforcement officer out there on the street every day.
Yes.
Yet, they're getting punched. We had a traffic stop up in Boston where it was a van full of individuals. One was an egg felon. The driver got out with a box cutter, started trying to slash agents, which wasn't even ICE agents. It was a few ICE agents, but FBI, ATF, in order to let his colleagues in the van escape. That's what we're seeing every day. Or other cities, they're out there on a traffic stop and just regular civilians come out and start interfering, trying to grab people, trying to get involved in a law enforcement operation. It's a bad situation.
How much responsibility do Democrat officials have for encouraging this type of violence? And the reason I ask that is because you and I both know we've seen a bunch of this. Hakeem Jeffries, Dan Goldman has done this. Michelle Wu, the mayor of Boston. We saw just yesterday Congressman Lynch from Massachusetts do this. A lot of this. And what they're saying, two things. One, they're accusing ICE of doing something villainous by the agents wearing masks as they do their jobs to try and conceal their identities. And two, they keep using these analogies saying that ICE agents are like Nazis, that they're like the Gestapo. Governor Tim Walz said that as well. How much responsibility do these Democrats have for, creating threats for ICE agents right now?
I think anybody, whether it's an elected official, one of these NGOs, these non-governmental organizations, or even some of the mainstream media that are making these comments, I hold them solely responsible for it. And I've said it before in a few of my interviews. If you look at the beginning of our enforcement operations when we ramped up, you didn't see ICE officers in masks, right? Now you may have saw them during the pandemic wearing masks, but in the beginning of this, you did not see officers wearing masks. When you started seeing officers wearing masks is when you started seeing their photos and home addresses posted on telephone poles, like for instance in Los Angeles, right? Or in Massachusetts, or you having officers' names, family members' names, kids' Facebook, Instagrams being posted saying harass them, make their life difficult. That's the only time you saw that. And so when elected officials call us Nazis, the Gestapo, secret police, right? That fires up that base that turns people against us. I said it in the press conference in LA yesterday. We always hear from these elected officials in these sanctuary cities. Well, if ICE had a criminal warrant or if ICE had a judicial warrant, we'd support you. We'd back you. Well, last Friday, ICE was out serving a criminal immigration warrant in Los Angeles. And look what happened, right?
Yes.
They got surrounded. They got attacked, thrown rock. But again, so we did what you wanted, right? Elected officials. We're out there showing immigration is a criminal federal crime. We have an actual sworn judge's warrant. Yet still, it's just not enough of them. So when elected officials call us the Gestapo, Nazis, that rhetoric transforms over to the craziness.
And so far, we've seen assaults, but the thing I'm on guard for, and I'm sure you're worried about too, is whether or not an ICE agent gets killed. That's what I'm worried about, because I think I've been saying that this type of gross language is going to get an ICE officer killed. And if that happens, it sounds like you're saying the same thing I'm saying, which is these Democrats will have blood on their hands.
Well, 100%. I think anyone that calls for violence against one of the men and women that, I have the privilege to lead is responsible for it. And, one thing I've said before, The reason why I'm so adamant about the mask situation or them protecting themselves, because under the last administration in 2022, I had Antifa protesters show up my house and threaten my family at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? So I know exactly what these officers and agents are going through. Just this week, I had two credible death threats. They posted where we were at, what hotel I was with my security team in Los Angeles, and kind of keep trying to keep track on that. You saw the federal building in LA, it says kill ICE. Our investigation team right now is so swamped with doxing and threats against agents that they're just overwhelmed. And it's because of this rhetoric, right? And to your point, Vince, they're going to get somebody killed, right? It's only a matter of time because,
Oh,
even with throwing a rock or a Molotov cocktail, you can still kill somebody, right? And it's just this fired up rhetoric that's going viral. And you see all these protests that are planned for this weekend, right? You think it was just contained in Los Angeles, but now we're having to spend special response teams all over the country. You saw a big uptick in New York
yes.
City. That's just ICE agents and other federal partners doing a law enforcement mission.
Do you have any reason to believe that this Saturday's left-wing protests amount to a threat to ICE, a new threat to ICE officers this weekend?
I do, and you want to give people the credit, benefit of the doubt, right? I'm the first one to say I'm all about the First Amendment, peaceful protest. ICE fully supports that, but their track record hasn't been that good, right? And it's not necessarily the people that are against immigration. You know, throughout the history of the Immigration, Nationality Act, there's always been people for or against it. But when you bring in these agitators, these anarchists, these funded groups just to disrupt those protests, they go under the cover of peaceful protest to initiate violence to get their point across in a cause. And that's
Yeah.
the biggest fear for me is that negative energy is going to be directed toward ICE agents, and this is the perfect catalyst to jump on that. Now, I heard your last segment when you were talking about what happened at the press conference yesterday. That I was on stage when the senator came right. I was right next to the secretary, and no one knew who he was. So you have somebody unidentified yelling, rushing, and you have two protectees up on the stage, and law enforcement did what they were supposed to do. But it's that type of grandstanding that's going to get somebody hurt.
Yes. So just since you mentioned it, it looked to me like they weren't rough on him. They handled him the way you would anybody who was trying to push their way towards the stage and people being protected. Is it your view that this was handled professionally and that everything happened by the book with Senator Padilla yesterday?
100%. If I have to credit the Secret Service and the other protective detail folks because they did exactly what they were supposed to do. That was a press conference. You saw that the press wasn't out there screaming questions. It was an informative press conference, giving all agency heads and the secretary a chance to explain what ICE was actually doing out there. And you had someone that was unknown to anyone on that stage or any one of the security details there. Those agents and officers acted with the utmost professionalism. Couldn't be more proud of them. While they protected the secretary and mitigated the threat, I think they did an outstanding job.
Yeah. Okay. Let me get to the big mission for ICE, which is to take illegal aliens who are in our country into custody and get them out. I know the White House wants to get up to a minimum of 3,000 deportations a day. At least that's the message we're hearing from Stephen Miller and Tom Homan. How far along are you towards that goal? And when do you think we might be able to reach it?
But I think we're doing great. Me personally, from my, I'm 18 years doing this as a career law enforcement officer. The amount of immigration enforcement we're doing right now is spectacular compared to what we've done in the past. I think you've seen some of our numbers like last week or the week before, we were hitting around 24,000 a day, and that's arrests, right? So when you look at those arrests and you have
Sorry, you said 24,000?
I'm sorry, 2,400. I gave myself a pay raise on that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 2,400. I mean, we're doing great. The problem is though, scenes like this week, right? Now you have that's going to seriously cut back our immigration enforcement efforts when you have active apps out there telling where ICE agents are, where ICE agents are doing enforcement? How are we supposed to go ahead and meet the presidential's goal and the secretary's vision of getting as many of the worst and these immigration violators off the street when we're encountered at every turn someone hampering us, right? That's huge. That's a
Yeah.
huge problem. I definitely think we would see a huge spike in our immigration enforcement, especially when it comes to the worst of the worst, if we actually had the cooperation of those sanctuary jurisdictions. That's
Yes.
huge. Look, you can go back to the Massachusetts operation we just did. There were so many targets up there because while the teams were out enforcing just regular immigration warrants, it was a constant feed of just more criminal aliens being released in real time. And, there's across the United States, there are so many immigration detainers that aren't honored. And it's not for just driving without a license or open container. These are serious, serious violent crimes that local jurisdictions won't hold for us. If
Right.
we add that 3,000 number wouldn't even be an issue. Or our goal would be much higher because we would have other law enforcement agencies that aren't hampered by political rhetoric and political ideology
Yes.
that want to be focused on a law enforcement public safety mission instead of
How
something political.
how different will the situation be if the big beautiful bill gets passed? Because the resources in the big beautiful bill include a massive expansion of your workforce at ICE,
Right.
and a lot of resources for deportations. Is there any math there that you're aware of in terms of how many more deportations could occur each day as a result of that package?
Well, if you kind of think about it at this kind of level, right? On the ICE side, there are two components. There's Homeland Security investigations, which the special agents do long-term investigation. And then there is enforcement removal operations. That are our fugitive operations teams, the deportation officers. That core group of individuals that do amazing work is one of the smallest law enforcement agencies we have. It's only
Hmm.
about 5,500 people. We're hoping to get about 10,000 more deportation officers just for one arrest in the street. If somebody isn't turned over to us, it takes us 6 to 8 officers and agents to go out and make that one arrest. So if you kind of do the math on that, we just don't
Yeah.
have enough deportation officers a day to get out there and let alone do 1,000 arrests to 3,000. That's why we had to take that whole of government approach and bring on so many other federal partners. So if the bill does pass, that increase in manpower would be huge for us
Right.
because it also gives us the opportunity to staff those deportation flights. It'll also give us funding to add more flights too at the same time.
Okay. Yeah, that would make a big difference, for sure. Beyond the criminal illegals that you're picking up, when we say criminal illegals, of course, I just want to, as always, stipulate that if you illegally immigrated to the United States, you've committed a crime right away.
Right.
But when we refer to criminal illegals broadly, that typically is people saying people who've committed more crimes even beyond their status as an illegal alien. How much more can we expect just general deportations to ramp up, where we're taking people into custody who are not violent criminals, they're not rapists or murderers, but they are here illegally? Can we anticipate those types of mass deportations increasing?
Yeah, Vince, you can. And I say this is that if you look at now that we're, under Secretary Noem and under President Trump, right? They've opened up the whole portfolio of immigration enforcement. So we aren't going to walk away from an immigration violator. There are
Right.
so many people that are here in the United States from the last administration that have valid, actual orders of deportation or removal, meaning they've gone through their whole due process, gone through the appeal process, and an immigration judge, a federal judge, has deemed them deportable or to be removed from the United States. There's over 1.5 million of those just like that. So while they may not be hardened criminals or have no criminal history, they still violated immigration law and they have a
Sure.
law order to be removed. And we're going to go ahead and effect that removal. But again, like I said about the manpower, obviously, like any organization, business, law enforcement agency, we're going to focus our resources on what we need to, those top tier priorities of the public safeties. But
Right.
as we're out there encountering these individuals, we're going to take action on those.
So can we expect more worksite enforcement by ICE, where you head
Yes,
to a workplace and you round up illegals and you get them out of the country?
yeah, and I would say that you're going to see more of that, not necessarily, well, for the point of the illegal workers and illegal aliens, But there are so many American companies that exploit these individuals, right?
Yeah.
That'll take advantage of people to get that edge over a competitor, let's say in the construction business, right? To hire um, people at a cheaper rate to build more houses. Yet they exploit them. They're involved in human trafficking. They're involved in child labor. So while we're going after the illegal aliens that are working, we're going after these businesses that are causing harm to these individuals as well. Because hiring illegals and forced labor, human trafficking to make yourself ahead in a business and make a more profit, that's
Yes.
just as legal as anything
So
else, right?
I was going to ask, that actually was going to be my next question. So when we talk about workplace enforcement, there are employers who need to be prosecuted for hiring illegal aliens. Can we expect that to ramp up in any big way soon?
Yeah, 100%. I think you're going to see, you saw just a large scale operation we just had in Omaha, Nebraska. That was a criminal warrant. There was a criminal warrant, like I said, that we initiated in Los Angeles on Friday against two businesses. So when we're going in there with actual criminal federal arrest warrants and search warrants on a business, that's not only going for those workers, but that's going for those business owners, the ones that are out there trying to make a profit by exploiting individuals. And that's what we're really focused on.
Okay, good. I do want to also ask you about the president's. The president posted to Truth Social yesterday that he said that the farm industry, as well as the hotel and leisure industry, has apparently been having some trouble with the fact that immigration enforcement is going on, presumably because they have so many illegal workers in those industries. Has the president or the White House given you any guidance on how to handle farm illegals who are working on farms or in hotels? Is the administration backing off on enforcement on those types of illegal aliens?
No, I think what you saw from the president's post is the fact that kind of what I said, we're prioritizing efforts in other areas. But I think really what the president and the administration wants to do is get these employers to focus on the legal avenue to go ahead and, the H-1B1 process where we offer the opportunities for workers to come in seasonally. That's a
Yeah.
great opportunity for individuals. Why? But that costs employers more.
So people know. So people know what you mean. There are legal ways for companies to hire agricultural guest workers. So you
Right.
can come in. They can hire people, and that's a legal means. But what this kind of sounds like, what the president is indicating, is that apparently those industries are full of illegal workers as well, and that's a real problem.
Yeah, and I think the president's vision and it is that these companies would go ahead and get away from the human trafficking and the exploitation of people, do it
Yeah.
the right way, where businesses pay those individuals the right way, support them in the right way, and give those individuals a pathway that come in here legally to avoid what we're going through right now. Because you have all these individuals that come in here, Vince, and you know that while they say immigration is a victimless crime, there's tax evasion, fraud, there's forgery, there's identity theft. There's so many U.S. citizens that are affected by this, by employers that are exploiting these individuals just to get them paid cheaper while
Yes.
causing harm to American citizens.
Also, illegal aliens have a massive effect on the economy in terms of the resources they draw. One of the pieces of the why the big beautiful bill matters so much is the White House has been pointing out that illegal aliens at least have been tapping 1.4 million of them have been tapping into Medicaid. There clearly, Todd Lyons, is quite a few illegals who are drawing off of the American taxpayer by being here. There's a cost involved.
100 is a huge cost. And we see it all across our social service network. And that was one problem on the last administration is a lot of these blue states, a lot of these sanctuary states, they saw such an influx because of the benefits they gave to illegal aliens. And that was one huge problem. When you have when I was the field office director in the Boston field office, I always sounded like a Travelocity ad because I said, well, Massachusetts is the #3 destination site for all new non-citizens. And that was because there was such a draw that they could go there, get a driver's license, no questions asked.
Yeah.
Free housing, Medicare, Medicaid, food. So when states have these sanctuary jurisdictions are such a draw to an illegal alien population, that's going to take away from the American citizens and the service providers that the state should be providing to veterans, homeless Americans, right? That's huge.
Yep. Okay, so I've heard Tom Homan, the border czar, kind of allude to this in the past, but is it possible to hit sanctuary jurisdictions, the leaders of those sanctuary jurisdictions, with charges? Are they operating in violation of federal law in any capacity that we can impose consequences on them in order to make it so that immigration enforcement is possible again?
Yeah, you can't. But to the border czar's point and to what Secretary Noem said on many occasions, if these elected officials, city officials, whether it be a town mayor, senator, whatever, if they impede an ICE operation, then 100% they can be held in charge. I can't tell you without getting too deep into a lot of the actual ongoing investigations that the Department of Justice has been a great partner. And every day, anytime we have one of these impediments, I can tell you that the Department of Justice, along with our Homeland Security investigations, are fully working those cases to, if someone is in violation of any type of immigration law or impedes criminally on one of our operations or does something to harm our agents, then the Department of Justice and the Department of Homeland Security are going to take full measures to ensure that those people are held accountable.
We've seen judges arrested for impeding illegal alien deportations. We've seen the mayor of Newark arrested for trespassing at a detention facility. We saw LaMonica McIver hit with charges for assaulting federal officers. Clearly, there are people being held accountable. And it sounds like, Todd Lyons, what you're telling me is that there are also multiple other public officials who are being investigated for perhaps violating criminal law.
Well, yeah, Vince, I can tell you that if someone's out there, and we have to look at every single case by case, right? But if someone's actually out there impeding us, or actually, let's say, for instance, like the doxing of the agents, I can tell you that every time one of our agents is doxed or someone puts that out, puts their name, photo, there's an investigation ongoing on that. If someone goes ahead and actively blocks or obstructs an ICE facility, there's an actual investigation on that. So it doesn't matter anymore if you're just some active young college protester to someone that might be an elected official. If you commit a criminal act while impeding ICE, you're going to be held accountable.
Would that include the mayor of Nashville, who stands accused of releasing ICE officials' personal information, doxing them?
Yep. I think you heard Secretary Noem and the Attorney General say that anyone that does release and put immigration agents or any federal agent, we had a few agents for the FBI that were helping us in California just recently had all their personal information put out and followed home. If anyone does that, regardless of your title or position, you're going to be held accountable.
Okay. And finally, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate this. This is a very big deal to share all this information with us. Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons. Can you preview anything for us of any sort of big action that might be coming in the days ahead? I know you don't want to jeopardize any specific operation, but we're always we're watching really closely because you got a lot of people rooting you on here.
Well, Pat, I appreciate that. And you've been a huge supporter of us. There's been so many people, the American people, that actually reach out and let us know every day that they're actually excited and happy with what we're doing. What I'll say is we're not going to be deterred by these protests. I said it in LA from the podium. This isn't going to stop us. We have the full support of the president. Secretary Noem is an outstanding leader. She's given us everything we need to make sure we accomplish our mission. And you're going to see us taking out these public safety threats. That's what we're going to do. The American people voted for ICE to fulfill their law enforcement mission, and that's what we're going to do. We're not going to be, held up by any of these protesters. We're going to go out there day to day and do our job, but we're also going to be safe doing about it. And I'm going to do everything in my power to ensure that the men and women that work for me go home every night to their family, because that's the #1 priority for me right now.
Okay, I love that. And I lied to you. I do have one more. You just made me think of it. Under Joe Biden, it seemed to me that ICE officials had handcuffs on them. And I would see statements occasionally released by ICE complaining about sanctuary jurisdictions, but they weren't really able to do anything. What is it? What is your perception? How much of a cultural sea change has it been to go from the Biden administration to the Trump administration?
It's night and day, 100% night and day. I served as a senior field leader under the last administration, and we did have handcuffs. It's very hard to do law enforcement when you ebb and flow every 4 to 8 years by executive orders. What President Trump has done is just opened up the Immigration Nationality Act and let us enforce the law as it's written, which is amazing. That opens up every portfolio within ICE's law enforcement mission. And now, whether it's like you said, worksite enforcement, child exploitation, illegal immigration, human smuggling, counterproliferation, we're allowed to do it all. So the handcuffs are off. And now ICE can be that viable law enforcement partner to the law enforcement landscape and really work on public safety in the United States.
It's such a huge deal. All right, you've got an important job to get back to, so we'll let you do it. Thank you very much, the Acting ICE Director, Todd Lyons. Good to talk to you today, sir.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.